Welcome back to Checkpoint. We're glad you're still with us. Please use the hashtag Checkpoint at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. We're hosting Honorable Musalia Mudavadi today, who's a party leader of Amani National Congress. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on Checkpoint.
Thank you.
So let's start by, the big, it's not an elephant in the room, but it's the big issue that has everyone in the country talking, and that is the IEBC. And there's now some sort of semblance of talks, or at least trying to get together on that issue. You've spoken on this issue. Would perhaps like to hear from you again on what you think on the prevailing circumstance surrounding the IEBC.
Well, thank you very much for hosting me on this. I would like to just quickly point out that the Kenyan populace, as it stands now, do not have confidence in the ability of the current IEBC as constituted to be able to have a free and fair election come 2017. Now, clearly this is a very serious issue, and it's a serious issue that must be tackled urgently by all Kenyans of goodwill, and especially those who respect clear democratic principles and fair play in our political landscape. So I would say that the current IEBC would do a lot to Kenyans at this stage, in fact, if they resigned. Because the whole tension right now is about those who are standing in to try and defend certain commissioners and those who want them out. In order to precipitate a quick resolution of this matter, the IEBC commissioners should actually resign, bearing in mind that more than 80% of the country now has lost confidence in their ability.
All right. Have you lost confidence personally? You participated
yes,
in the
yes, I have.
What are your specific issues with IEBC?
Basically, it's a question of competence. One, the IEBC has come out very clearly confirming that in their procurement process, the tools they used, the BVRs they used, the voting equipment they had was faulty. That is a very serious breach. Kenyans have lost a lot of resources, public resources, and then at the same time, they are now left with serious doubts about the outcome of various aspects of the election. The second aspect about the IEBC is that we are now seeing day in, day out, a situation where they say they are unable to meet their targets. They set out to register almost 4 million voters in the last mass registration. They came out and said that they had failed to
but to be fair, they talk about financial constraints, and say Parliament has not given them the funds that they are asking for to be able to conduct a proper voter registration exercise around the country.
That is what they say, and that is what the excuse they're giving. But it's 4 years down the line. Since the last general election to date, you cannot now come and tell us that it's only at the last stage or the second last stage of a process which should be ongoing that you're having difficulty in getting resources. They have not been voicing out of this. They've been complacent in having the situation as it is, and them literally maybe flirting with the executive on these issues. And that is why they are now leaning heavily on a situation where they hope the executive can rescue them.
Okay, you talk of the commissioners resigning, but is that all, it is? Is that the single most important problem, that if the commissioners are out of the way, then all is well with the IEBC and we're well on the path to having a free and fair election in 2017?
Remember I said it would precipitate quicker action on resolving some of the issues. Because as we speak now, I've just given an example about procurement aspects, you've talked about something about funding and so forth. So there are a lot of key issues, all relating to the electoral process, which would need to be tackled systematically. Now, if this is going to be done, and people have lost confidence in the leadership of that institution, then the logical thing is that if they moved aside, because there are also integrity issues, which perhaps may not be solved in the normal public way, but there are integrity issues which are also on the table. Now, the only way for Kenyans to have confidence that this process will now be taken more seriously is for a situation where we have different people driving the seat.
Okay, you've talked about the commissioner sometimes flirting with the administration. Do you think that the IEBC is in bed with the government? I mean, Court has said it, Court has been open and, you know, saying that the commissioners are being protected by the government, protected by Jubilee. Do you share that same view? Do you think they have completely lost neutrality and they're now siding with or are essentially an agent of the government?
You see, if you look at the time frame that we have going to the election, maybe another 12 months, really, it's slightly over. And there is a serious crisis. People are dying. There are constant demonstrations about your ability to handle certain things. I think, in all fairness, they should step aside. If that happens, then the players, and these are the Kenyan people, all the stakeholders, not just the political class, will quickly address themselves to the issue of how to deal with a new IEBC or a new membership of IEBC, and at the same time be able to tackle the processes. Because then you'd be having people who would be ready to listen to some of the aspects and the concerns that the stakeholders have. But here we have some people who are in place, who have decided that their way is the only way, and therefore they may not be ready to listen to other views.
And with respect to my question, do you think they're in bed with the government?
Let me put it this way. They rely on the government for their funding. The issues of integrity have come up. They're relying on the government to prolong the process of any action being taken against them. And let's put it plainly. Not too long ago, the president of this country stood in Parliament and said the following people, some including cabinet secretaries, their integrity issues, and I would like you to step aside so that the process of investigation or due process can take place. Now, how come there were different rules then and the same rules are not being applied today? And the plain simple thing is this: if the head of state called you or me or anybody else who is in a public office, holding it in trust for the Kenyan people, and said, I think there's a serious breach of trust or lack of trust in you when you put it in the eyes of the public, that would be a very simple message to you that you're better off exiting.
Okay, all right, but some would talk about the independence of the commission, and in fact, you know, that is in the acronym, that it is independent, and if the president were to start asking members of an independent constitutional body, then that would again be separation, you know, sort of meddling with the separation of powers concept?
No. Asking and talking to somebody is one thing. We are not saying
so
that...
So you don't believe he's asked the IEBC commissioners to leave?
I don't think he has.
Okay.
We are not telling him to take a pen and purport to sign and say you have been fired. No, that's not it. But a head of state is a serious person. He's the principal custodian of the Kenyan Constitution. And if he sees that there are certain issues that are clearly not in the interest of the broader good of the nation, he can actually talk to you.
All right. In a general sense, do you think then in his role as the custodian of the Constitution, and he swears to protect it, there have been many allegations against the president saying he has not upheld that end of the bargain, that he has not protected the Constitution, and that he has constantly breached it. What do you say to that? Do you agree? Is it, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10? Has he protected the Constitution, or has he breached it on a number of occasions?
I think that question would be fairer if you are going to ask me on a specific aspect that you believe he has breached.
But in general, there have been allegations about a number of things, about going against court orders, the police recruitment, for example, blowing up of a ship at the Indian Ocean against a court order.
But I'll give you an example. In certain areas, like let's take the recent proposal to be able to change how you appoint a judge within the Judicial Service Commission. The principal legal advisor to the president is the Attorney General. How that happened, one wonders. But then, at the same time, the president then assented to that particular piece of legislation, only to be overturned by the High Court, saying that that process or that law is unconstitutional. So there are certain aspects that are there. It's for him and for the Kenyan people to continue being vigilant. And in this case, the Kenyan people are now extremely vigilant on the issue of the IEBC.
Okay.
This is not about the president or removing him. This is about the IEBC.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about that, because there have been protests, there have been demos, and like you rightly said, you know, a number of Kenyans have lost their lives in this. You seem to share, at least on the issue of the IEBC, the same views as CORD. But you don't participate in the demos. Why is that?
Now, let me put it this way. The IEBC is a Kenyan problem. Okay? The Jubilee and the recommendations that have come either from the Public Accounts Committee and even sections of the Jubilee coalition are also very clear that there is a lack of confidence in the IEBC. CORD says there's a lack of confidence in the IEBC. We say there's a lack of confidence in the IEBC. So there is some common ground on this particular issue across the board. So it is a Kenyan issue. Yeah. All right? And I would like to caution those who want to try and make it look at Jubilee and a CORD issue. Please, let us not profile Kenya that way. So do you think that you've been left out because perhaps you were not part of the demos? No, you were not seen as a part of that? No. Do you agree with the idea of demos? Is that a principle that ANC holds dear? Demos are allowed in the Constitution, and it depends on what issue is at play. Would you go out into the streets? On this particular issue, I've said no. I've said I would rather push for a process where there is dialogue. Okay, all right. Yeah. That's a good point to now talk about the dialogue, because we're seeing some semblance of that coming together, but we know of CORD asking for talks before the talks. But interestingly, you're pushing for dialogue, but yet you and your party are not part of the dialogue. We're seeing CORD and Jubilee. In fact, when the president had his press conference on this issue, he talked about an equal number of members to this joint parliamentary select committee. Equal between CORD and Jubilee. Nowhere did ANC come up in that. That is the folly of this particular issue, because I've said this is a Kenyan issue, and I would like to very plainly tell both CORD and Jubilee that this is a Kenyan issue. Why do you think you've been left out? Do they not take you and your party seriously enough? No. Because you have a good number, 11 seats. Let me put it this way. The symbolism here is that the question of the IEBC is about the democratic process in the entire country and the confidence people will have in the outcome of any elective process. So this is a Kenyan problem. And it is therefore wrong for either of the leading coalitions, that is Jubilee or CORD, to imagine that they should confine it and make it one of the issues. So what are you going to do about it? We are standing very clearly, and there are many options. There are options that could lead to court processes in matters like this. So is that something you're considering? And I would like to say that as I speak, I'm not speaking purely as ANC, because I don't sit in parliament, as it were. Yeah. Neither do the other people. What is important is to recognize that there are other stakeholders in this country. And if they don't do that, what are you going to do about it? Court process? Is that something you're saying to do? Then they'll be falling into the trap of trying to have a quick fix, which will eventually still come to haunt the Kenyan people. We must agree to work together collectively across the board on an issue of this nature. What are you willing to do? You know, and I'm still not getting the answer to that question. What are you willing to do? What is your party willing to do in the event that you continue to be ignored? And like you say, it's not just yourself and the ANC party. There's a whole number of other stakeholders who are not party to these talks. LSK that have talked, you know, have had their misgivings about the IEBC. Religious leaders who, of course, you know, are helping to sort of broker, you know, the talks between CORD and Jubilee. But there's also COTU that have spoken out against this. But, you know, what's it going to take for you to get yourself and all these others on the table? What are you willing to do? Let me tell you, as we speak, we have had some consultations with other players, and we'll continue to have those consultations with other players who are not necessarily in parliament. Okay. All right? Don't you also find it ironical that at the end of the day, even these two coalitions, as they say they are naming people to participate, they are still naming parliamentarians. Right. Okay. Right. So there's a little some contradiction here in some of the. But the point I want to put across is that we welcome the statements being made and the points being taken by other institutions like COTU, the LSK, the church or religious groups, and even parties like ANC. And we are talking, and if we feel that we have reached what you would call breaking point, and these two coalitions are leading us to nowhere,
right.
Clearly, we will then come out even more strongly to tell Kenyans that these two coalitions are not the only players in this country.
Okay. I'm not sure if I should pick the worst case scenario.
Yes, just pick it.
But, let's say that the talks go on.
Mm-hmm.
They're not all inclusive, as you say, and the outcome isn't something that satisfies you. Will you still participate in the elections in 2017? You have expressed, your desire to run again for president in 2017.
I have.
Will you still participate in the elections? I mean, there's a number of, core leader Raila Odinga has been on record as saying, if we don't reform the IEBC, we will not participate in the next election. But, what is that? Does that seem extreme to you?
I think that is jumping the gun.
Right.
To be very honest, that is jumping a gun. The gun, and to try and assume that I will tell you more than a year to the election that I will not participate in that election.
Some would say it's a matter of principle. If you think the IEBC is competent to conduct the elections, you will participate.
I think in all fairness across the board, this is what you would call trying to up the stakes in a negotiating kind of situation.
And you don't want to up the stakes.
Right. So we have to look at it more objectively.
Okay.
Now, maybe I should try and put it this way. What are the initiatives that are being put on the table? You see, the whole principle of a select committee is not a bad idea. Okay? And indeed, there are a number of parliamentarians who are coming out strongly as being the non-bipartisan members of parliament who wanted to break this stalemate so that they're not held hostage by extreme protagonists in both the two coalitions, Jubilee and CORD. Now, these members of parliament, I would strongly advocate that Kenyans look at their proposal a little more seriously and their initiative more seriously, because what has happened is that a good initiative has been hijacked by the political leadership trying now to determine who should be members of a committee, and yet this was supposed to be a parliamentary process. Okay.
Do you agree with it being a parliamentary process?
There's no harm in it being a parliamentary process.
Right.
Provide
block out persons like yourself?
No. Listen to me on this one.
Yeah.
It can be a parliamentary process which dovetails properly and has rules of engagement with other stakeholders in a manner that becomes logical and becomes credible. And this can be done. Okay.
All right. Your presidential ambitions for 2017, we know what happened in 2013. You came third, and some would say a distant third. Would you want to talk to us about how 2017 would possibly be different for you? And, we've posed this question on Twitter. It is by no means a scientific poll, just trying to gauge the perceptions of it. So far, not so good for you. And every time you come up and say you want to be president, there's all of these terms that come up. Spoiler, safe pair of hands is way too safe. And some always brand you as a project of somebody else. Do you think you've been able to outgrow these perceptions, as it were?
Oh yes, I have been able to outgrow them. And I really feel sad for those who still hobnotch and believe that anybody expressing and wishing to find space and to seek public office in this country, as enshrined in the Constitution, is doing so for selfish reasons, or is doing so at the behest of somebody else, or doing it for somebody else in his favor. I stand as Musalia Mudavadi. I have a party called ANC, and I'm putting myself before the Kenyan people, and it's up to the Kenyan people to decide. So they can either decide to vote for me or not vote for me. And I would respect that decision. And that is the position I've always held.
Many people say in Kenya that we're now moving towards coalition building and building alliances, with parties that hold different ideologies and that have strongholds in different parts of the country, and that this is the way to go. Would you ever consider, building bridges and coalitions, joining CORD, Jubilee, for example? Or them joining you.
That's better. Thank you for that rider.
That's also
that's an important rider.
Right.
I think what is important here is that let us work within the framework of our constitution and sometimes the political realities. And political realities may mean that sometimes you have to form alliances. And then we would have to discuss and know clearly what are the terms of this alliance. So these are issues that Amani National Congress is open to. But in the meantime, we want to cut a profile where people will recognize us more as ANC and what we stand for on a number of issues. Therefore, at the appropriate time, if the political circumstances would dictate that alliances be formed, those are issues that will be discussed within our party, and we are not we have not cast our constitution, our party constitution, in stone. We are ready, and it has provisions for dialogue with other people.
Okay, alliances haven't always worked for you. I mean, many would remember the famous statement by, then presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta saying that agreement to endorse you and to support you was, quote, coercion by dark forces. He went back on that said agreement, and then we had UDF in some sort of, working arrangement with Jubilee. That again is not working. And some are saying, look, coalitions haven't really worked well for you. How different would it be should you choose to decide to work with another party?
And
what's the relationship between you and Uhuru? There's still dark forces there?
One of the things that I would want to put out to the Kenyan people, I think it would be so important that when they get the next opportunity to interview Uhuru, they actually pose this question to him. Because I am not the one who reneged on an agreement. I didn't. It's him.
So would you work with him again?
So it is him to decide. But let me put it this way. What is the lesson I have learned?
Yeah.
The lesson I've learned is that in Kenya, the whole issue about MOUs and political agreements are things that we all must handle extremely carefully. What is the recent example? The recent example is the two code principles. Raila and Wetangula.
Right.
They go to State House, have lunch when the Korean president is there. Up to this day, there are rumors of some kind of discussion.
What's your take on that? Do you think there was an agreement reached at State House?
Now, the next thing we see, there are serious denials flying all over the place.
Do you think there was an agreement reached at State House?
So the point I'm trying to put across is this, that we must also be very clear that the political class in Kenya, some of them, are very dishonest.
Who do you think was dishonest in that instance?
We are going to see in the next few days. Shall I tell you how we are going to see? Because if you start seeing how they're setting up as to who should represent who in these committees, the way things are, after they've named the so-called representatives, all of them seem to be getting scripts from their principals that you can only go to the negotiating table and this is all you have to say.
Well, that's a natural process of negotiation.
So here is a situation where perhaps even this process is being set up for failure.
Okay.
We shall see very shortly who is genuine and who is not. All
right, okay. We will definitely be looking out for that. My final question to you, in the last election, you came third. You had about 483,000 votes. It was about 3.96% of the total votes cast. And some say, look, you don't have enough clout even outside of Vihiga, that ANC is based there, that even a good number of your party leadership, you have Osotsi, who's also from Vihiga County, you are from Vihiga County, and that it is basically just in Vihiga County. What's that national platform? What's this national ideas that you would bring to the table that would bring everybody on board? And even though you are based in Vihiga, some say even in your own backyard, you are unable to, whip members in line. Akaranga now saying he's going to work with Jubilee and, tired of being outside of government and not getting the development there. So there's two questions. One, that you are based in Vihiga and that even in Western Kenya, you do not command, the vote and the influence amongst your people. How then would the country trust you?
I think we need to look at our position more broadly and fairly, because this is something that we have constantly, or have been constantly, been unfairly treated by so many people in this country, including those who analyze my politics. Now, if we go by the ticket that I had last time, does it occur to those people there that we had 11 members of parliament? The Lamu
Not
governor.
all of those are following you
No.
into
Listen,
ANC.
But listen, the Lamu governor is not from Western Kenya, but he's a strong supporter of mine, and he won on my ticket.
Right.
There are other members of parliament in Marsabit. Robert Duba, he won. Now, in places like Kwale, we got 8 MCAs. Even the speaker of Kwale was from my side of the campaign. The MP in Tana River, Dukicha, came in largely because of the force I had and the national appeal I was putting across. So it is not absolutely true when people keep on hammering this impression that I don't have national outreach. I do have national outreach. I think what is important is to respect that as we go forward, as we consolidate, there are going to be bigger movements within the ANC. The deputy party leader, as I speak, is not from Western Kenya. He's somebody from the coast in Kwale. And there are others who are coming in. Our organizing secretary is from Taita. So there are all these other players who are within ANC. My other deputy chairman is from Garissa, Yare Mohammed, the chairman rather, Yare Mohammed. So it is broad-based. And it's not an issue about somebody looking at it from where I was born.
Okay.
And in any case, I've always said, the idea of my politics is to persuade through logic, not through coercion, not through intimidation.
All right, okay. Yeah. We ran a poll today, just very quick response as we conclude. On Twitter, we asked, would you vote for Musalia Mudavadi if he ran for president in 2017? And the poll results are in. 84% say no.
It's
and
their right.
Just 16% say yes.
I think it's their right. They have the right.
But that sounds like a very safe answer from a politician.
No.
And some would say that is part of the problem with your candidate.
No, in fact, what it does, it is the right, but it gives me an opportunity to go and work even harder.
Okay. Are you still the safe pair of hands we can look forward to in 2017?
Well, do I look unsafe at all at any one time?
I don't know, that's a
no, I am somebody who is prepared to work for the integration and proper harmony in this country. Okay. I would like to work with a cross-section of everybody. I would like to make sure that I defend and protect the Constitution and listen to other Kenyans.
Okay. Yeah. All right. On that, we conclude. Thank you very much. Musalia Mudavadi, Party Leader, ANC, that's the Amani National Congress. Right. We thank you for your time, and we wait to see, indeed, like you said, who was dishonest in those talks, and whether indeed you will find your space, and indeed all the other players in the talks that are going on.
Can I make it this way?
Sure.
It's not about a personal issue, whether I'm sitting on the negotiating table or not. Okay. It is the principle of ensuring that other stakeholders are part of this process. That is the most important thing. Okay. It's not about the individual. It's not about Musalia.
So you would be happy if you're not sitting
even if I'm not sitting on the table. But Kenyans would then feel that a proper process has been put in place and they're happy with it and the outcome is respectable.
Okay.
Then that is what matters.
All right. Yeah. On that note, we conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Musalia Mudavadi, thank you for your time on Checkpoint. I'll be getting to more of your feedback in just a short while, so keep them coming. The hashtag is Checkpoint.